Well, Baruch Hashem, how are you?
Baruch Hashem.
Good.
When you're making your Suda, you making the shul or your home?
Home.
Like before Chatzos?
Before Chatzos Asiris, maybe after Chatzos. Actually, someone sent me, I could read you even in one of the sichas that Rebbe said, I'll read you just a line that Rebbe said, one of the bringing. Give me a second. Here, I'll read you. This is from Purim Tovshin Lamed Zayin. The Rebbe says here, "Medarf takim machen v'sude b'beker, v'marzei steht in Shulchan Aruch. Medarf aber nicht medayik sein und gucken auf den See geht. Es ist kedem Chatzos oder ach Chatzos."
You have the option.
So anyway, according to the Alter Rebbe, it seems he doesn't speak about Purim, but it seems from the dinim of Erev Shabbos that the ikir is it should be before Shoah Asiris.
Shoah Asiris,
which is about the Chatzos is by the 7th hour.
Right.
This is 3 hours later. You can make it till about 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock.
Okay, I think we could start. Yeah, I think we could start. Okay, the choice of the sichas this week from the project of the sichas was Tava Aleph or Purim Aleph. Purim Aleph is a very long sicha.
Long sicha.
Even though this one is not complicated mamish, but a little bit complicated tzarasha, so it's in the parashas, but it's negated. This week's parasha. So we'll start here. Tava Aleph and Chelik Tazayin.
What?
The Tava Aleph Chelik Tazayin. Concerning the mitzvah, the commandment, where the pasuk speaks about the meal. The meal is the rope that the kohen gadol wore. The pasuk concerning the pasuk where it says "Vasis milo eifed," again, make the meal.
Before you say it,
guys, mute your phones, please.
I got some more locks. The sale changed in March 2nd. So
can everyone mute their phone, please?
I got 4, but I only got 3.
The pasuk says like this: Sofo yiyeh lepiv. It's talking about the meal. Stoviv ma'ase eire kefi sachra yiyeh lo yikoreya, which means like this.
I'm supposed to 3 pills a day.
Translated, it's hard to translate exactly into English, but this is the taken of the words that the pasuk says. That the collar on top should be hemmed inside. Should be for work.
As long as you don't touch it, I'm like, okay, I'll just observe. He's like,
it should be the work of a professional weaver, like the collar of a coat of armor. And the last words of the pasuk is lo yikorei. It means it should not get torn.
I was running late, and secondly, there's no point in sitting there when technically I'm supposed to be practicing with people, and then this.
I don't know who Jonathan Kohanovich is, but he's the one that has to mute himself.
Sorry, I'm turning it off. Sorry.
So the pasuk at the end, when it says there should be a hem there, the pasuk Firtuis finishes off Lei Korea. It should not get torn. Stellt sich Rashi auf die Werte Lei Korea. Rashi is mighty, quotes the words of the pasuk Lei Korea, and he's mafarish and explains. And the Rebbe is going to bring parts of Rashi in 2 different sifim. So first, to bring the first part of Rashi. Rashi says, what does Lei Korea mean? Kedei Shay Lei Korea. In order, it should not get torn. So first the pasuk says you should make it like a hem, and then the pasuk says Lei Korea, it should not get torn. So Rashi teaches that the pshat in the pasuk is it's in order it should not get torn. And then Rashi adds Va'keirei Eiver B'lav. And if anybody tears it, is Eiver and a lav and a negative mitzvah. V'chulu means that there's more to this Rashi, but the Rebbe will talk about it separately, not to confuse the issue. So the second part will be in a sif base. Is nicht verstandig, so this Rashi is not understood. From dem was Rashi sagt in Onim von sein Pirush. From this that Rashi says in the beginning of his commentary, as Lei Korea meant Kedei Lei Korea. Lei Korea means this is in order, it shouldn't get torn. Is klar, as Rashi nemton, is clearly that Rashi learns, as Lei Korea as nit kan inyan v'tzivu for sich. That when the pasuk says Lei Korea, it's not an inyan for itself. It's telling us it shouldn't get torn. It's a reason for what the pasuk says in the beginning. The pasuk says sofa yi lepit kivi sachro. It should be a hem, and it should be like an armor, the way they used to make hems. So Rashi says the pasuk continues. Shleikareya means kidei shleikareya. That the reason why you need the hem, so it shouldn't get torn. So that's how Rashi learns at the beginning, that the taich shleikareya is kidei, in order it should not. So that's a hemshich to the pasuk before. Haint. Wie is Rashi meisi behemshich was this? So how does Rashi continue? With avov meisi, with avov, that means that he's adding. Rashi writes after the if you're tearing it, you're able to alav. According to the second words of Rashi, Rashi is telling us that it's an inya for itself. It's not a reason for what the pasuk says before why you should make a hem. He says that you're able and alav, you're not allowed to tear it. So if it gets torn, if you tear it, you're able. So it seems like that the beginning of the Rashi and the end of the Rashi and the second part of the Rashi is a contradiction. First, Rashi teaches that what does it mean, that this is a reason for what it says in the beginning of the pasuk. You should make a hem in order it shouldn't get torn. And then Rashi says a new thing. Like if you tear it, you're able to love. That means it's not a reason. It's the tzivui. It's a lav that you're not allowed to tear it. So it's a contradiction. Noch starker did be. The kasha is stronger. In Gemara Shteitake, and the Gemara Taka says like this. Gemara Yuma. Omar Rochve. Rochve said, I'm a kind of big de kahuna like it. Says if somebody tears big de kahuna, tears any one of the garments of the Kayan, gets malchus. When do you get malchus? You get malchus if you're Avra and Alav. Shanebar, it says Leia Korea. It says you shouldn't tear. So the Gemara learns that this is a law for itself. It tells the Torah, tells you not what to tear it. Maski, but was a Mayankis, or those Mayankis asked the Kasha, the Dilma Hocha Kamarachmon, maybe the Pshat in the Pasuk is different. Maybe the Pasuk is telling you, Navid Lasofa, make a hem, Kehecha de Le Nikra, in order it shouldn't get torn. So the Gemara answers, Niksiv Shelei Korea. You can't learn the Gemara says that it's a reason for what it says before, then it should have said with a shin. Make a hem, Shelei Korea, so it shall not get torn. Since it doesn't say with a shin, it says Stam Lei Korea. So the Gemara says we must say that it's a lav in itself. Because hey, so when we look at the Gemara, it shows in order to taich, Lei Korea means it's in order not to get torn. It's a reason. Is bestiret to zognas is a lav. It's a contradiction to say it's lav. The Gemara itself. The Gemara says it's a lav. Then the Gemara says maybe no, it means in order not to get torn. The Gemara says no, that's not the pshat. So we see the Gemara makes it clear that these two pshatim are contradictory. You can't learn both. You can't learn it's a reason and at the same time it's a law for itself. That's what we find in the different mafarshim, two opinions. Under the touch in Leikere is blazon is in. Some learn that Leikere is a reason for what the pasuk says before. Make a hem so it shall not get torn. Well, now the touch says labi from the atzmi, and some say it's a law for itself. So it's a machlekes. So it's two separate things. The question is, wie is es Rashi mitzaref zwei verkehrte pirushim and ein in demselben pirush? In one pirush, Rashi puts them both together. Rashi says the pshat is in order it shouldn't get torn, and if you tear it, you're over in the law. So it seems like a contradiction. So that's the first part of Rashi. The noch is Rashi Mamshel. Then Rashi continues and says like this: that this pasuk of Leia Korea, these words, is included in the amount of lavin in the Torah. There's a certain amount of lavin in the Torah, certain amount of negative commandments. This is one of those. He says an example. We find other places like that. Le yizach hacheshin. It says you have to have the cheshin tied to the ephod. The cheshin was the breastplate. Then the ephod is the other part. I don't know what they call it in English, whatever. So it says in pasuk you should have the cheshin connected to the ephod, and then the pasuk says v'le yizach hacheshin. The cheshin shouldn't move, shouldn't separate. So this is also a lav. When it says you should put the poles in the oren, and it says in post leya surum and don't take it out. So here it also means the same thing. What is Rashi bringing here? A dugman example from these two. So Rashi said like this: that this after Rashi says that if you tear it, you're over in the lav. So Rashi said because this is from the numbers of the lav in the Torah, like le'yizach hacheshin and le'yasurum that says by the body oren. In Pashtas Kumtui, so simple pshat in Rashi seems as midderei sofa shezem min yalav mishabatayra. Where Rashi adds after he says that if you tear it, you're over in the lav. So Rashi adds this is one of the numbers of in the minyan in the amount of Lavan in the Torah in Rasha is Rasha Usen to bring in a raya. Rasha writes this to bring a raya as Lei Korei is alav. To bring it to raya, it's alav. Choch de mashmos hakosav Rasha taish betchilas perusha kadei sheli Korea. In other words, Rasha is trying to show that this is alav for itself, in spite of the fact that Rasha wrote that this is a nesina stam. Rasha starts off that this is a reason why you should make the hem in order not to tear. Nevertheless, it's alav for itself. That's what Rasha is trying to show. That's why he says it's Raminyan Lavin. So Rasha is proving, because otherwise we think it's it's only a reason for the beginning of the pasuk. It's not a lav. So if you tear it, you wouldn't be able to lav. But Rasha says that if you tear it, you are able. So Rasha says, because this is one of the minyan, this is part of the number of the lavin that we have. That's what Rasha says. Is nitmukim, we don't understand. Rasha's spirit Rasha pshat is, as we always know, is based on the simple pshat in the pasuk. Is from wanneer neemt Rasha from pashtes aksuvim as leikare is a minyan lavin shevatera. Where does Rasha get from the simple pshat of the psukim that this is one of the minyan of the lavin? Where do we get such a thing? Rasha is like using this as a raya. Since this is one of the minyan of the lavin, since this is included in the number of the lavin, so obviously if you tear, you're aver. That gufa is not clear. Where do we see that? If we know that from pshat of the pasuk, then Rasha can use this as a raya. But we don't know that gufa. So where does Rasha get that this is one of the minyan? Emes takadrinye for minyan amitzvos b'chal betchen gebracht in pirish Rasha as alteira. Bemes, you could think a different thing. Where do b'chlal does Rasha get that there is a specific number of how many lavin there is in the Torah? That's not a shaila that Rebbe says, because Rasha, whatever reason, Rasha brought in Pshuta Shel Mikra earlier in different places that there is a number to the mitzvahs. There is Tayag mitzvahs, there's a mitzvah, so we have a minyan lavin. So the fact that Rasha says that this is part of the minyan of the number of the lavin fits to Pshuta Shel Mikra, obviously, because Rasha brings it. Obviously, but where do we see from the pasuk that leikare is part of that minyan? Rasha says, if you tear your aver and a lav, and he brings a raya because this is part of the minyan of the lavin. So there is such a thing as minyan of the lavin in pshat. But where does it say that tearing leikare is part of the minyan of the lavin? Noch mehr nicht verstandig is der siyum von Pirish Rasha. Even less understood is the end of Rasha. What did Rasha say? This is one of the minyan of the lavin of the Torah. And then Rasha adds, v'chein leyizach ha'cheishen. So to the lav where it says the cheishen should not be removed from or move away, be loose from the ephod. And the same thing when it says don't take out, it says by the body ha'orim, by the poles of the orim. What does Rasha mean with that? The Forshim say, Rasha bringing these two psukim is Rasha Uis and Rasha Zin. His purpose is to bring in a dugma lepirushay, to bring an example to his pshat. That what? As Lei Korea Saya Labifni Atzmi Saya Sinistam Kadishli Korea. When Rasha comes out for some reason, we ask the Kasha how could that be, but Lepel Rasha says that Lei Korea has two inyonim in it, two pshotim, not two separate pshotim, two things. Number one, this is a reason why you should make a hem, in order not to tear. Rasha then added, this is allowed. It's a Torah tells you don't tear. So Rasha wants to bring a dugma that there is such a thing as having one pasuk being sai a reason and sai a lav. So Rasha brings these two, but it says le yizach ha'cheishen, the cheishen shouldn't be loose, shouldn't move, and le yasurim, and which said by the body. But eichen yende psukim is the pirish aposhet in le yizach or le yasuru. The simple pshat in these psukim is also the same, like here kedei shel le yizach. That when the pasuk says over there, you should connect the cheishen to the ephod. And then the pasuk says le yizach means why should you connect it? Because the Eibusha said in order kedei it shouldn't be loose. And the same thing le yasuru is kedei shel yasuru. It says the pasuk says put in the poles. Kedei you should never take it out. So there we have a two psukim where the pasuk means in as a nesina stam, a reason for what it said before. Und doch seine sie lavim b'fnei atzmai. And at the same time, they're separate lavim. Und werden reingerechnet in minyan lavim, and they're included in the number of the lavim. So Rasha wants to bring a dugma. He didn't answer the shaila how Rasha put the two together, but L'Poel Mamish Rasha does put the two together. So Rasha wants to bring an example that there is such a thing of putting two together. We find over there too. Lei Yizah B'Decheshen is a reason for what it says before. And nevertheless, it's a law for itself. Le'yasura by the badim is a reason for what it says before, and nevertheless it's allowed. He's nicht verstandig, so the Rebbe says, not understood. Neise with the Shaila nal aderach nal si base. Eich dort von wann nimmt Rashi from Pasha Zaksuvim as he said in Minyan Lavin Shabbatera says not understood. First of all, the same kasha we had before on the Lei Korea. That Rasha says this is one of the Lavin. And it brings an example that these two are also part of the Lavin. So the same kasha we had before, how does Rasha know that this is part of the Lavin? Same thing these two psukim. He's bringing this as a raya, just like here it's part of the Lavin, even though it's a Nesina Stam. Who says this is Minyan Lavin? In Pshutish Mikra, where do we talk about the Minyan Lavin? That's the one kasha. But besides that, if deep psukim, le'yizach und le'yosuru, stellt sich nicht Rasha zusteichen, as he's an Nesina Stam, and Allah b'fniatzmei. On those psukim, Rasha doesn't tell us this new chidush that they have two meanings. It's a meaning of a reason, and it also is allowed. Rasha doesn't say, if Rasha is trying to bring this as an example, why doesn't Rasha say it over there too? There we don't find it. It's a monashech. If Pasha Rasha needs a raya that you could have both things, Balei Korea, that it's Saya reason and Saya lav, and it's not easy to understand it. So Rasha needs a proof that this is able to be said. And that's what he brings from those two psukim. These two psukim are written before. And if it's a problem to say on such an expression that it means Saya reason and Saya lav, the problem is there too. So why didn't Rasha say anything there? And if Rasha holds that it's not a problem, you could learn something like that. It's so simple, seems like Rasha didn't explain it by Le'izach. Rasha didn't explain it by Le'yosef. As similar, you could say Rasha holds it. No, it's not a problem. Rasha doesn't have to say it. He doesn't have to say it. A child even could think of it. And that's why Rasha doesn't say it there. So why does Rasha have to explain it here? And even bring rayas. In other words, it's a contradiction. If this is a problem, Rasha should have said it there too. If this is not a problem, then that's why he doesn't say it there. He shouldn't say it here either. So we have these kashas. If the Reshta Shaila, the Lil Sif Aleph, on the first Shaila, that it's a contradiction, how does Rasha say that this has two meanings, which seems to contradict? That it's a reason for having a hem, and it's also a law for itself. But enter Meforshim have that. That if Shuta Shamikra Fuskomen, according to simple pshat, you have to say, Aleya Korea, Nazayach Leizach Yasuru is not conceived and Nasin Free. The Pasha is when you learn the pasuk. Let's start from the beginning. How would a person learn the pasuk? When it says Leia Korea, it shouldn't get torn. The Pasha is it's a reason. The pasuk says make a hem in order it shouldn't get torn. So when it says Leia Korea, you would learn it means it's a reason. The same thing by the others. Put in the badim in order not to take it out. Connect the cheshin to the ephod in order it shouldn't move. Aber das will gemeint blaze and the sinistam. That's what they say. That if it Pash says it means a reason, but if it would only mean a reason, but gedarf stein shele Korea, it should have said do whatever it is, so it doesn't get torn. So it should have said with the shin. The Gemara reflect we said before. The Gemara asks that why can't we learn that this is a reason because it would have said with the shin. The form was the state Leia Korea, since it says Leia Korea, or by the other two Leizach, Leos, that it doesn't share, is gedrungen that proves that the Torah is the mitmaram is hatzvein. That's what the Forshim say. That itself, see, simple pshat is it's a reason, but the fact that it doesn't say a shin tells you that there must be something else here, a double thing. Number one, the pashtas mashmoes hakosav anesinas tamafri. Simple pshat, that's a reason for before, and the second thing is atziva Leia Korea, that it's also mitzvah. So the posik is like two things here. The simple pshat, if you read the posik, you learn it's a reason. You have a kasha, it's the diuk of the words is not so. Okay, so that diuk is also for a reason why it doesn't say with a shin. Without a shin, it seems to be a ninya for itself, a law for itself. But lapel, the hemshech posik, is a reason. So Rashi said it's both. So it's not a contradiction. So could be that's a good teretz. But the kasha we asked before remains. Favos is Rashi nit mefarish dos alles frier of leYisurim leYizach. Why doesn't Rashi say it in the other psukim? Okay, it's a problem, but you figure out that it could be both because of the way that the Torah is written. So you should have explained it there because Rashi explains it here. Obviously, it's not understood by itself. If it would be understood by itself, the senior Rashi wouldn't say it here. The fact that he says it's Yasimah, that you have to explain it. Why didn't explain it there, which is earlier? Is a beer in them? The explanation like this. Al derech hapshat, a simple pshat you have to say, alei yasuru and lei yizach, need kanesina stam. Again, derech hapshat, it's not a reason. Nor blaze at sibu v'lav ifnei atzmi. It must be a mitzvah for itself. Allah, the Torah says, don't tear. Don't get it torn. Don't move the chayshon. Don't take out the poles. Why is it al pshat like that? For me, as we said, it should have said with a shin, like the Gemara asks. So if I can, the Rebbe is looking the other way. So Bepashta is not like we said before, Bepashta it's a reason. Elamai, we have a problem with the shin. If I can, look at the posik without the shin, it can be, it doesn't seem like it's a reason. So Pasha, it's not a reason. He's talking now about the other two. We'll get to the tearing in a second. Even though you could think, why would I think that the Torah is telling you, I laugh, don't do this? Torah should have said, don't take out the poles. Don't move the chayshon. Was well gemeint that Siva you ever mentioned, which would have been clear that it's a commandment on the person, do zol zeini topton. Don't take him out. But it doesn't say that. It says le yasuru. Le yasuru is talking not about the person, what the person shouldn't do, talking about the badim. It's talking about the poles. The badim is only talking to werden from the taboris. It's like talking to the badim, the poles should not go out. That the chayshon should not be moved. So the chure, we said, the Rebbe is saying, Bepashtes is mashma that it's a lav, because it doesn't say with a shin, but you could think it's a problem. It should have said, don't move it. So the Rebbe says, no, it's not a problem. You could say, even though it just says it shall not move, and it doesn't say you shall not move it, it could mean a tzivui, which means der Mensch darf sich mistadel sein, als die Batem sollen sich abgetan werden von den Tabois, weil der ist bei der Yizach. What it means is, it shouldn't be moved. So what's the pshat? It's telling the person, make sure that it doesn't move. Make sure that the body are not taken out. Now, derech with that tzivui non in posik, there's a tzivui, when it talks about the badim, in the beginning of the posik, it says, Betabais ha'oren yiyu abadim. In the rings of the oren shall be the poles. What is that tzivui? There it's definitely, he's telling you where the tzivui to the people, where they should put the badim. So he's telling you, put it into the rings. And Hakam the posik rettin to make pull sodom, even though the posik doesn't say the person shall put the badim into the rings. Nor wegen the badim, betabis ha'oren yiyu abadim. All it talks says about the badim itself, and nevertheless, it could mean a tzivui. So B'meila comes out that this etzem idea that the posek we're saying means without a shin, doesn't say so it shall not be torn, so it should not move, so it should not be taken out. Since it doesn't say with a shin, it's not talking, it's a law for itself. The Torah is telling us it's tzivui. It doesn't say don't do it, doesn't matter. The Torah says this should not happen, should not move, means the person should not move. So therefore, Rasha has no problem in those two psukim. It says don't move. It means a tzivui b'fnei atzmi. This also. Ashini is over in unser posik where state leia korea. This is going to be a little not complicated, not clear what the Rebbe is saying, but I'll try to type truth. This posik is different, where it says leia korea. The kuf with the komets leiyiko and the reish with the tzeiret tzruya leia korea, which means binyan nifal. Okay, which means like this. It means it shall not get torn. So we're telling you something what it should be done. It shall not get torn. Was demot. Now, speaking this, that's different than the lei yizach and the lei yosuru. Eibdos is atzivu v'lei yizach and lei yosuru. If this is exactly like over there, that the Torah just means an inyan for itself, to not tear, just like over there, even though it says it talks about the thing, it doesn't talk about the person, but it means the person should make sure the thing happens. If it's like that, if we're going to say this is a tzivui for itself, then this is something different. Since here it doesn't say it shall, there it says it shall not move. It shall not be loose or it shall not move. By the badim it says it shall not be removed. Here it says it shall not be gotten. That should not get torn. It's not that it shall not be torn. It shall not get torn. What's the difference between saying it shall not be torn versus it shall not get torn? The difference is the Rasha touched by kol malacha le'yosem. There's another part that says no malacha should be done there. Rasha says afila and de'acherim, even others not. That means you have to make sure that nobody does it. So when it says le'yikoreya, means not only that it's a tzivui on the person that the person should not do it. It's a tzivui that you have to see that other people shouldn't do it also. Just like by malacha it says it shall not be done afila de'acherim. Now, interesting that le'yizach and le'yasuru, there it doesn't say in such a way, it shall not become removed, or it should not be separate, be moved away from the ephod. It shall not get moved. It shall not move. It shall not move. So the difference is here, the Torah will be telling you it should not be gotten like that. Means even nobody, you have to make sure nobody else does it. Over there, since it doesn't say in such a way, there's no tzivui, which means there's haste. As le'yizach and le'yasuru, noch kamas as the mishkan mekil. According to this, that the le'yizach, when the shcheshin shouldn't move and you shouldn't remove the badim, and so other types of things that you're not allowed to do in the mishkan, is al de'achere macht nituis. Others could do it. If we're going to see, since we see there's a difference, here it says le'yikoreya, and there it doesn't say le'yuzach. Ubemele, here it's mashma that the Torah is specifically telling you, no, you can't, you have to make sure no one else does it. Which proves that wherever it doesn't say this way, it means others could. Al derech hapshat leitzach das nit. It's hard to say that all these things, you shouldn't do it, but you don't have to make sure no one else does it. The Riber Taish Rasha, therefore Rasha says that here it's different. Kadesh le'yikoreya. The shine aloshin in posik do is a nesines tam. Val dos is nit vi by le'yasurim v'le'yizach. In other words, the Rasha like learns, it is like there. It is a tzivui. Like over there, it's a tzivui. But the fact that the Torah says le'yikoreya can't be, and it's a shinu, it's a change, look at the other psukim, can't mean that the Torah means that over here you can't have others people do it either. So there must be another reason why it says le'yikoreya. But Rashi says le'yikoreya is the reason, and that is nitvi le'yasura le'yizach, not like over there. So l'chure is mashma like this. From the fact that the Torah says it, it's a lav. It doesn't say with a shin, it's a lav for itself. On the other hand, if it's a lav for itself, it should have said le'yikra, or something like that, not le'yikoreya. Because le'yikoreya seems to be telling you something that even others can't, which by the other places others could. So obviously it's not that. So Rashi learns, when it says le'yikoreya, it means kadesh le'yikoreya. But we said it can't mean a reason. Because if it mean a reason, it should have said with a shin. It must mean that there is a lav. The reason it doesn't say with a shin is because it is a lav, and a lav for itself doesn't say with a shin. It says le'yikoreya, shouldn't there? Shin is only a reason, but it can't mean only the lav, because if it be only the lav, it's a loshen, which, as we said the problem before, that means that here others can do it, in other places he could. So b'meila we have to say it is a reason. Now, if it is a reason, now we have both. So we have a reason, and it's a lav b'fnei also because it doesn't have a shin. So the movement still not understood. If the Torah does want to say as a tzivui, as a lav for itself, why is the tzivui only with the remes? Because we said, how do we know it's a tzivui? I only know we know it's a tzivui because it doesn't say with the shin. It's a remes. Since it should have said it's a remes. At tzivui, that doch stehen klorum beferish. If it's a tzivui, it should say clear. Don't tear it. But it's not, doesn't say don't tear it. It's a reason, but with the remes of this not saying the shin, that it's also allowed. Rasha says, continues, Shazem iminyan lav mishabatera. This is from the amount of lav mishabatera. Das was le'yikoreya teita badait from lav. Says this, it's a lav, is nicht birday zu losen da wissen dem etzema yisra am eternit reisen dem meal. See, sometimes when the Torah says a lav, it's to tell you the din. Don't do this, don't do that. Here, Rashi is trying to tell you, it's only a lav. It's a part of the, to make it in a minyan Allah, but not to tell you the Isur. I'll show you the Rebbe says soon that you shouldn't tear it, we know. So why does the Torah here again do it? It's an inyan, it should be a lav. It should be part of the lavin. He's not trying to show a raya that we know that there's a minyan lav in it. This is part of it. It's like the Meforshim learned. He says, no. Rasha says, this is a little complicated. Rasha says that the Pasuk is trying to tell you that the Torah says like as a lav, just for the sake of it being a lav. Not that otherwise we wouldn't know. We would know. What is it? The Pasuk do vil dem Isra Yedua Arainem in Cheshem Shesal Leisese. This Isra that you can't tear it, we know from before. We'll see in a second how. The Torah wants that this Isra should be part of the 365 lavim, and if the Torah would not write it here, it wouldn't be part of the minyan of lav. We know you shouldn't do it, but it wouldn't be part of the lavim. Und der Far muss da haben den Badait von a lav. It must be a pshat of a lav, because the Torah wants it to be a lav. Und das kann stehen nicht billig beremes. If the Torah wants to tell you a lav to know what to do, has to say beferish. Kasha was, why doesn't say beferish a lav? Look, the Rebbe, that's not what Rashi is trying to do. That's not what the Pasuk is telling you. Pasuk is not trying to tell you can't do it. That we know. So what is the Pasuk trying? The Pasuk wants it should be in the form of a lav. Not for this, it wouldn't be in the form of a lav. Why not? What? From where do we know this? From Vana Veisman, the Metzama Yisrael, Metonet Kerez and the meal. How about when the word we said before that we know already that you can't tear the meal? Where do we know it from? It's moving bepashtas from Afridic and Pasuk. We know it from a previous Pasuk. The Pasuk says, "Vasvisa big the Kedesh v'kovdul seforos." Make holy godim, holy garments for the Kehanim, for kovet, for honor, and for beauty. Atzaris and a beged need to cover the seforos. If it's a beged that's torn, it's not nice. So we know we can't do that. It has to stay to cover the seforos. But that Pasuk itself is not allowed. So the Torah tells you what you know already from before, that you're not allowed to do it. Torah wants it to be a lav. It should be part of the lavim. That's what the Torah wants. So that's what Rashi says. He brings. So Rashi brings this to answer a kasha. After Rashi explained what we said before, that kasha, why is it only a remes? If it's a lav, it should be beferish. So Rashi says, no, it's not to tell you a lav that we wouldn't know otherwise, and he has to tell you clearly what he wants. We know what to do. The Torah just wants it to be a lav, which otherwise it wouldn't be a lav. So that could be a remes for another lav, for making it a lav. But the Rebbe said we could ask on this. We find many places where Rashi says that the reason the Torah writes a certain isur, even though we know it, and we know it, it says a lav already, because the Torah wants you to be aver on two lavin if you do it. Which means that sometimes the Torah adds a lav, even though we know from another place that you can do it. And even when the Torah writes a lav, just to make a second lav, which means the etzem zachat, you can't do it, we already know from before, which as we said now, if you know it from before, the Torah doesn't have to say it beferish a second time. Torah could make a remes. So how come the other places where Rashi says that the Torah writes a second lav, it's written beferish? So l'chur is mashma that even if it's not for the sake of telling you the iser, it's just for adding a lav, it also has to say beferish. But l'chur eich doget ashtein beferish et zivui. So it should have been clear here too. As metonet kereis on the meal, but you can't tear the meal. Achoj der posik will der nor sagen dem iser as er iser is eich a lav. Even if we learn that the Torah wants to tell you that the iser, that it's a lav, not to tell you the din. Nevertheless, the Torah should have said beferish. Like over there, Torah tells you something beferish, even though we know it from a different lav. The Torah, nevertheless, if it wants to tell you another lav, it says beferish. So the Torah should have written beferish here also. Rashi answers this. By Rashi writing these words, Rashi writes like this: if you tear it, you're aver and a lav. That this is one of the numbers of the lavin of the Torah. Rashi doesn't say if you tear it, you're a lav, and this is one of the lavin of the Torah. What's the difference? What's the difference if you write shezeh that this is or and this is? Das heißt, that this is one of the lavin of the Torah is the reason why if you tear it, you're aver and a lav. Tosfos said is aver b'lav, he does blaze while there is a minyan lavin shebeteira. Why are you aver? Because it's one of the lavin of the Torah. Well, what does that mean? You're aver because it's lavin the Torah. So the Rebbe is going to explain that here it's different than other places. We'll have to learn further before we can even have an idea what this is. In andere Erte, where the Torah is Mesik Lav, in other places where there's one Lav, and the Torah has another Lav. And the Torah says it beferish the second time. That's what we said. Why doesn't it say it here? So he says like this. Over there, the reason why the Torah adds another lav is as bichdei der mit zu machen der miser harber in hergish for mention. Torah wants the person to feel how strict it is. If you do it, you'll have another lav. Mit der kavane soll sich leichter abhalten von ton der miser. For the purpose is a person should be easier for him not to do the avera. If he knows not only it's one lav, it's a second lav. So the purpose is to make by the person it worse, make it stronger. But here when the Torah makes this into a lav, the tearing of the meal, he says, it's not in order that the person should know that this Isser is very strict, make it stricter. But the Torah will do in the Misa from Tzerais and the meal and Minyan Alavim. The Torah wants it to be in the number of the lavin. See, there's two things. The Torah wants it to be a lav. That's right. If you do it, you're a lav. Then sometimes the Torah does it to make it stricter by the person. Here, it's not to make it stricter by the person. If it's to make stricter by the person, it has to be clear. Torah wants to tell you, you can't do this. Then Torah says again, you can't do it. It can't be beremes, because it doesn't make it stricter if it's only a remes. Here, it's not for the person to feel. Here, the Torah wants it to be one of the lavin. As a result of the Torah making it a lav, now if you tear it, you're ever in a lav. Since the lav is not to make it stricter by the person, is genug, it's enough if it says beremes. So over there, the Torah says a beferish, where the Torah adds a lav, because the Torah wants to tell you again, make it stronger. Here, the Torah just tells you a fact. The fact is it's a lav. That's the reason. That's the type sheh. Sheh means it's a reason. The reason why are you ever a lav? Because it happens to be a lav. It's almost like Rashi is saying, you're ever an a lav. You know why? Because this happens to be a lav. The Torah wanted to be a lav, so if it happens to be a lav, you're ever an a lav. Over there, other places, the Torah is telling you for that reason. Der Miete sich mufen von was Rashi is meshande von Loshen HaGemara. This also explains why Rashi changes from the Loshen HaGemara. The Gemara says, "I'm a kareya big the guna leke." You tear from the beginning guna, you get malchus. Und Rashi schreibt akere ever belav. It doesn't say the word malchus. It says you're ever and a lav. What's the difference? Well, now we know the difference. That was said. The adgoshe in Rashi is nicht zu aruz bringen dem chemer achet von Tzerais in the meal. Malchus tells a person, don't do it. It's very strict. You'll get Malchus. The Torah is not interested in telling you how strict the Aveira is if you tear it. Malchus, so strict you'll get Malchus. Das was Korea hat echt der Badait von Lav is blaze at Eitzor, der Fum was der Isser is Shazam Minyan Lav Mishabetera. It's because it happens to be one of the numbers of the Lavin. So B'Mele, that's the reason why you're able on the Lav, because it happens to be a Lav. So the Rashi doesn't say you get Malchus. The fact is, yeah, if you're able to Lav, you get Malchus. But that's not the purpose here. When the Torah wants to tell you how strict it is, so you know how strict it is, you get Malchus. But the Torah wants to tell you just that this is a lav. Torah made it into a lav. If not for this lav, it wouldn't be a lav. You wouldn't do it anyway. You wouldn't be able to do it because it says Kovelut Tisfores. But it wouldn't be a lav. Now that the Torah wanted it to be a lav, so b'meila you should know you're ever in a lav. That's like shazem minyan, not this. Another thing, you know it's a lav, and it's one of the numbers of the law. This whole thing is a reason. So that's why Rashi writes it in this lashon. It's still not clear. But the question is, what's the idea? Here we're saying it's a law because the Torah wanted to be part of the law. Why is over here? Why other places we don't? What's up here special? The Torah wanted to be part of the law. And since it became part of the law, now you're even the law. The Rebbe brings Rashi weiter, b'chein le'yizach, b'chein le'yasurim, that's why he brings by the cheshen le'yizach, and by the badim, the poles of the oren le'yasuru. But in the lavin is nitok and chidish in the metzam yisah. Here also, when the Torah says these to lavin, there's nothing special in the Isra itself, because that we would know. Und der Fund Zetman as by Melechas HaMishkan Chulu will der Posik Meses Zayim Minyan Lavin. So this tells you why did the Torah talk over there right? Over there, it's not telling you the lav, the Isser. As the Rebbe will explain in a second, because the Isser we know by those two places without this Posik. But why did the Posik add the lav of Leizach by the Cheshen, the lav of Leisura by the Badim? Because Torah wants it to be a lav. So Rashi brings an example. The Shaila will be why it was over here. Did the Torah make it, the Dafke wanted to be a lav? He says, you see other places in Melechas HaMishkan. He said, by the Mishkan, the Eibishter wanted that the Isurim should not just be known that it's Osir, but it should be a lav. These two also, we know that it's Osir, but this makes it into a lav. Where do we know it's Osir? By Cheshen state, Vayikas HaSacheshen, Repsil Tchelis, Liyas HaCheshen Ve'evet, you should put the Cheshen with the strings, with Liyas, it should be on the Cheshen Ve'evet, on the Cheshen, which is the Gartel of David. When Rashi takes this up, Rashi says, what does the pasuk mean? Liyas HaCheshen Dovuk HaCheshen Ve'evet. The pasuk tells you that the Cheshen has to be connected to the Gartel of the Ephod. What does that mean? Veis Mishin at the Cheshen Muzan Dovuk to make it. So we know it has to be connected. That's a Dovuk. So why would the Torah have to tell you, like, don't have it come loose, don't have it moved around? We know it has to be connected. Azayah by the body orange state, but Tabes Oren, you abadim. It says clearly, in the rings shall be the badim. It's a clear tzivah. It says that the badim have to be in the rings. The form of the Torah is Meisiv Dilavin leYisurim Menim leYizach. Now that the Torah adds this Lavin, Yizach Chocha proves as by Mishkan and Big Kahuna is the posik Bechlal Uisen to Meisiv Zayin Lavin. We see here the Torah wants to add Lavin, even things which you know from other psukim that has to be a certain way. The Torah wants it to be in Lavin. The Rebbe is Shengringer to verstehen, but nicht in the dance. So if you see these two places, so it makes it easier to understand here. Das was the Torah schleibt leikareya or nicht shel leikareya. Nor but it's amazing sein alav. The Torah especially writes leikareya, and it doesn't write shalei. And if it doesn't write shalei, it means it's not any sinistan. It's a lav b'ifnei atzmei. Why does the Torah want a lav b'ifnei atzmei? Because the Torah wants it to be a lav. That's what we explained the whole time. Wants it to be just for the sake of being a lav. And what's the purpose? Because we see it in other places also. It's an example because it's hard to understand that the Torah wants the dafka to be allowed. Yes, we find it by the cheshen and by the body order. Now it's not going to do this, but if you look back, how all the kashas are answered. Let's just for a second look back. The first kasha, how is there a stira? These two, how does Rashi write a stira? First, he says that means leyakorei means it's a reason why you should have a hem in order it shouldn't get torn, and at the same time he writes that you're ever and a lav. Yet they're both true. The fact that it doesn't say Shalei Korea, it's a lav. On the other hand, we said before that it is also a reason, as the Rebbe explained before, that it has to be a reason. We said here, because if you say it's not a reason, it's different than the other psukim. It says Lei Korea. Then the other Shaili asks why he brings these. So the answer is, because these answer the last Shaila that we had. Adukmi wants to bring a raya that the Torah is interested in having all the inyonim of the Mishkan in the form of a law. Okay, let's go. When the inyonim of Floim al derech halacha in the Pirish Rashi, the Rebbe says that in Rashi, even though it's Pshuta Shel Mikra, you can always learn out nigla things. Halacha inyonim in Rashi. The Rebbe called it always inyonim mefloim. See, the Chassidus of Rashi he calls Yena Shel Torah, and the other things he calls inyonim mefloim. So from the Yonim Efloim al derech halacha in Pirish Rashi, the Rambam Paskin is like this: Hakereya pi amil. If you tear the hem of the top of the meal, like you get malkish. And it says leikareya. Then he said, "Hu adin lechol big dekuna." Same thing by all other garments of the kehanim. Shaker on derech hashchasa. Like if you tear it in the form of ruining it, you get malkish. Now by the meal, he didn't say. If you tear the meal derech hashchose in order to ruin it, you malchus. From Pasha's Lashon Rambam Kontuis, from the simple way the Rambam writes, it seems asido achilit zwischen alle big dekuna and the meal. There's a difference, but the isur of tearing between the other big dekuna and the meal. By alle big dekuna is maleken or aker and derech hashchose. By other ones, you only get malchus if you tear it in the form of ruining. You're interested in ruining. But by the meal, he doesn't mention that. So there you chayev, you get malchus even. You tear it not derech hashchos. What's the reason for the difference? So the Achreinim explain Pshat Rambam. Those is a kol big dekuna leike. Inside the malach from leike sasum came. By other big dekuna doesn't say don't tear. So where do we get this whole isur that you're not allowed to tear big dekuna? Oh, there's another pasuk. It says that you have to destroy Avodah Zarah and everything has to do with Avodah Zarah, and then the pasuk adds lei sasum came, but don't do that. To the Eibishter's things. So from that we know that you can't destroy anything that belongs to the Eibishter. Und der Lav is not derech hashchosa. This Lav says you should destroy David Zor and its things, and don't destroy holy things. Big Dekuna is holy things. So no, we can't destroy it. But if it's based on that Lav, it's only derech hashchosa, because there the Pasuk says, don't destroy. It doesn't say don't tear. Don't do destruction for holy things. So it means that the big dekuna, which is holy, you can't do what? You can destroy it. That's why Rasha says, the Rambam says, that the Isur is only derech hashchosa. Bashenke by the meal, kunt malchus mitzad melav lo yikreya. By the meal is a separate posik, don't tear it. By them lav is memchayev malchus b'cholin. And here it doesn't say only if you mean to destroy it. Whichever way you do it, you're chayev. So this is the way they learn Pshat in the Rambam. The Rasha learned over in Pashtaksum, the way we explained Rashi in the simple Pshat of the Psukim, the posik is meisiv them lav leikreya nitzu le meisiv zaynanayim iser. That we said before Rasha learned that the posik leikreya is not a new iser. Remember, they does a lot in the minyan lav mishavatayra. The reason the Torah does it, just that it should be allowed. The Torah wanted that this should be allowed, but not because to make the iser stronger. That's what he said. It should come out. The Shittas Rashi, and you're talking chilik in the meifna kriya zwischen the miil and andere big dekunas. According to Rashi, there will be no difference. If the Torah is telling us a new iser in purpose, so it's a new iser which doesn't mention hashchosa, doesn't mention that you can't do it if you're ruining it. So there would be chayiv also if you don't ruin it. But Rashi learns that this is not a new iser. Whatever you can do from before, the Torah just puts it into a form of a law. So therefore, why should we say that this adds a new dimension in the iser? That even if it's not derech hashchosa, whatever the iser is by everything, the Torah wanted to be separate law by the meal. But it's the same as by everything else. So just by everything else, it's learned out from the pasuk Lisas and Cain, and there it's only if you mean to destroy it. So by the meal also, only if you mean to destroy it. Not so. The Rebbe will say that it's like a machlekes between Rashi and the Rambam. From the Yeinish Shaltein and Pirish Rashi, when the Chassidus and Rashi like this, the Chur is not moving. The Pnimis Yonim, Chassidus is not understood. Favos bringt Rashi the Reihe from Vela Yizach, was steht in unser Sedre, far the Reihe from the Yasura, was steht in the Friedrich Sedre. Rashi brings two Reihes. From the pasuk of the Cheshen LaYizach and the Badim. First Rashi brings LaYizach, and then from the Badim. The Badim is in Parshat Truma. LaYizach is in Parshat Tetzaveh. So why does Rashi change the say that he brings first from the pasuk of the Cheshen, which is in Parshat Tetzaveh, and then from the Badi Orim, which is in Parshat Truma? It should have been the opposite. Eich, what is Rashi meisik noch einmal the word v'chein LaYasura? Rashi says LaYizach, v'chein, and the same is LaYasura. Why v'chein? He should have said simple. Like it's LaYizach and LaYasura. Why v'chein? The full movement for that we understand that the lav LaYasura is noch a chidush and aggressor chidush with the lav on LaYizach. It's mashma that the Rashi is going to say that LaYizach is a chidush that whatever is going to mean up Chassidus, and LaYasura is another chidush on top of that. But the Rebbe brings him Rashi noch LaYizach. When he's the farmasi noch amal v'chein. He wants to show there are two different inyonim, and one is more than the other. That's why he says it. LaYizach is like we say, we go min akala lakovet. First one chidush, then he says a bigger chidush, and he has word v'chein. What is it? What is it saying here? The beer in them. So the pshat is like this. The lav le'yikarei is not chidush gadol. The fact that you can't tear the big dekuna or the meal is not a big chidush. She's a verstandige Sache mit Turnen mit Kalker and the big dekuna. It's obvious that you can't ruin the big dekuna. Simple. Not a big chiddush. The knows like Rashi v'chei is a cheshen, and also you shouldn't make the cheshen loose. Eichlas opruken dem cheshen ma'aleif, even just to move away the cheshen from David. Chosh is in therein. You're talking kilkel. There's nothing ruining. You're not ruining anything. It's eich alav. It's also alav. Aber eich dos kann man verstehen. You can understand that too. The posuk allein is dort mamshi. The posuk says, the nosar and the shmeis b'nei Yisrael b'cheshen hamishpat al libeh, he should carry the cheshen on his heart. Lezikoren lifnei Hashem tomet, it should always be zikoren. So you can't move it away because it always has to be connected there. It should always be. So it's a bigger chiddush than the first one of not tearing the kuna, but it's also not 100% the chiddush because we understand the posuk says he should always hair on his heart. If it's going to be removed a little bit, it's not on his heart, so it won't be the zikoren. So, but the in Ganzen nicht moving the town from the Tabis Orden, but by the Orden, we don't understand. Why is the Takadina, the Badim, the poles always have to be there? The Badei Orden sind gemacht geworden mit dem, soll dem Orden kennen, der rumtragen und wacken. What are the poles there for? To be able to carry the Orden. The Midbar, they traveled, so every time they had to carry, the poles have to carry. So the was darf the badim sein betabe certain alamo. Why do they always have to be there? The badim, the poles. Other rabbi, but pashas of the seder gedarf sein. Simple thinking, the seder should have been. I'm so say reinlegen in the tabois when we darf from the modern trogen. When you have to carry it on, you put it in. Why should they always have the poles there? That also, this is also something. This is a bigger chidush. That by the badei haoren, the badim, which don't belong there, they should only belong there when you're carrying it. You can't take out. Even to just take out the badim is allowed. The same lav, the lav von zerreißen und kalkas ein big dekuna. Mamish as much as it is tearing the big dekuna. So Rashi says that lav. Now we still don't know see why take, but lapel, whatever the reason we'll see in a second, is a bigger chidush than the other two. So Rashi talks about a Korea chidush that you shouldn't tear. Then another chidush that the cheshen should always be on the heart, but it's not such a big. And then even the badim should be in taboyos. What's is taka the tam? What's the yisurim? And what's taka the reason why is it always that you can't take it out? Zog the roof the sefer achinu. The sefer achinu writes like this: It's taveinu. We were commanded about nosi bad orim memenu, never to take out the badim of the orim, and he gives the reason why. Pen niyat tzrichen lotzesim orim l'shum mokim b'mhirus. There might be an emergency, and we might have to run with the orim very fast. And it will be running, and it will be people be busy. So when we go to put in the badim, when we're going to have to carry it, if emergency comes and we have to carry it, probably out of getting excited, you won't be sure that they're strong, that they're strong, that they'll really hold up the order. But if it's there always, you make it very strong, so it's always available to be carried wherever you have to take it to. That's the reason why the order has to have the badim. Always. This is a great lesson in the Aved of every person. In the modern Zayin gelegen the luchas. What was in the luchas? The dos der in Torah, it's Torah. Und in Lashon Chinuch haoren mishkan Torah. The oren is where the Torah lays. Eichayid was learn Torah is bedugmas oren. Every Yid who learns Torah is like the oren. It is an ort und mishkan Torah. Every Yid becomes a place for the Torah if you learn Torah. Ken Yid by sich trachten, Yid could think in that site was it darf sich abgeben mit Torah when you have to learn Torah. Certainly if that's your main occupation, you have to be completely immersed in learning. Be isolated, separated from everything around you. So then I have to think about something. Why should I think about somebody else? I'm very involved in my learning, and the other people around, I shouldn't think about them. I should only think about learning. That sounds like that's the right thing. Of them is the roh from the body, and you have the lesson from the poles. Even when the Oren is in the Holy of Holies. The holiest place in the world. But the Farkan Nor can Godel and Norbi make it put it. That's why only the Kayan Godel, the holiest Jew could go in, and only on Yom Kippur, the holiest day. Dan müssen die Badim sein mechonim leilom, bechdem sie können bringen the morning b'mhirus, so the mort will not gedacht haben. Always the Oren has to be ready to be brought wherever you have to bring it. That's to have the badim always. And noch mehr, das Arusnehmen the badim von the taboes goes further. Taking out the oren, the badim, the poles from the rings, vermogt sich dieselbe Harka wie zerreißen am Kalkus ein big dekuna. It's so strict, like tearing the big dekuna. Bearing to is a terrible thing. Same thing here. Thinking that when you're involved in Torah, you don't have to care about anything else, is as terrible as tearing the big dekuna. Tearing the big dekuna is a terrible thing. And not being ready to help another Yid or go to where you have to go is just as bad. Just like we said by the Oren, the same thing by every person in Torah. As much as a Yid has to be immersed in Torah, in learning Torah. Always has to be ready to bring the Torah when and where we have to bring it. And Dafkin Hanefin from here, and you have to be ready very fast. So no Chayid, another Yid. So this is the big Chiddush. So Rashi brings the three in the Seder. As a Chiddush, you can't tear the meal, the big dekuna. That's a terrible thing. Then the second thing is that the Cheshen has to be there. And now even the Oren also has to, that's how important it is. And the Hero is that the union of, as much as you're involved in Torah, and the Torah in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, always be ready to be taken. It's a hard sicha, as we saw, and it has to be explained. Time doesn't allow, but you have to learn it over again.
Yashakayach, Yashakayach.
Shafavos.
Thank you, Rabbi Shapiro.
You're welcome.
Freilich and Purim.
Come on.
Pray